Hey, Alter Everything listeners. We wanted to let you know that you can join fellow data lovers, analysts, and innovators at the Alteryx Inspire 2025 conference. It's the analytics event of the year, happening May 12th through the 15th in Las Vegas. Head over to alteryx.com/inspire to register now. We would love to see you there. Welcome to Alter Everything, a podcast about data science and analytics culture. I'm Megan Bowers, and today I'm talking with Eric Daimler, CEO and co-founder of Conexus, and the first AI advisor to the White House under President Obama. In this episode, we chat about how his company consolidates data with AI, his takes on AI regulation, and the key for a positive future with AI. Let's get started. Hi, Eric. It's great to have you on our show today. Could you give a quick introduction to yourself for our listeners?
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing AI for a long time, probably more than most. How people know me, and if they know me, is often as the first AI advisor in the White House under President Obama. I have PhDs in the area. I was a researcher at Stanford and Carnegie Mellon, and ultimately a faculty member at Carnegie Mellon in computer science. Been a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road, and I'm on my sixth startup. This most recent one is a AI spin out of MIT. So that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, you have an incredible background, so I'm really excited to chat today.
That's kind. Thank you.
And of course, I'd love to start off with your current company, Conexus. If we could just hear a little bit more about what you guys do and what business challenges led you to start this company.
Yeah, maybe I start with the last part first. This was a privilege I had from the position I had in the federal government, which is just seeing the largest AI implementations in the world, really, and the difficulties that people would experience from that. We had our taxpayers funded this technology at MIT to solve a problem in the Defense Department and at NASA around the transferring of models from existing technologies into new technologies without having to start all over from a fresh slate. There's advantages of starting from a fresh slate or clean piece of paper, but the disadvantages are equally obvious. You lose years of people's work in modeling aerodynamics in an airplane or interactions in a rocket. This type of interaction in data is foundational to trusting the output of a data in an AI model. So this was funded at that time and went in passively after I got out of the federal government, just as an interested investor, and then decided to jump in full time not long after that. What Conexus does is, broadly speaking, the infrastructure underneath AI. We often know that we can't trust the output of AI models, as it says at the bottom of many of these large language models. That we often can't trust the input because the data's not really always available. You can kind of imagine the general in the army, they're asking some subordinate if all the data has been collected and is incorporated in the conclusions being given to her. That's really not an answer that can be definitively given. You might also often just say, no, I haven't given you all the data, but I don't know where it is, or I don't know what's missing, or I can't count on it. That'd probably be the honest answer. So what Conexus does is it uses a neuro-symbolic AI, a deterministic AI, combined with probabilistic AIs to guarantee the integration of data across large systems. These could be expressed as simple as database migrations or automated lift and shifts, all the way up to much more complex data integrations for the largest organizations. The benefit of which is that you can count on your data and you dramatically decrease the cost and the scheduling for integrating the data that you need to solve ordinary problems.
Gotcha. Very cool. So I know building large language models is at top of mind for like a lot of listeners, a lot of companies. So Conexus, how does it fit into that workflow of building a large language model?
It's really complementary. So we might have all learned in grade school philosophy about induction and deduction. So these large language models are all inductive. all I've seen are white swans, therefore all swans are white until proven otherwise. That'd be an induction. A deduction is, well, I know that all birds have wings. This animal has wings, therefore it's a bird. It's just coming at this completely in opposite ways, deduction and induction. Conexus will use a deterministic, that's why I say symbolic AI, to deduce facts that are already present in an organization's data. That is a model that is best applied to operations versus exploration. So you and I, the rest of the world, are summarizing emails and perhaps creating better ad copy using large language models. But if you wanted to run a power plant or design a rocket, in the case of that was the genesis of this technology, or any number of other critical issues, then you'd use a neurosymbolic AI. I was with a friend not so long ago who, working at a hospital, was trying to treat patients and was fighting against his hospital's 5 departments of unintegrated data. He said, I fight against my hospital's own systems as much as I'm trying to treat my patients. And this is patient clinical data that's just not available to the clinicians with the speed and assuredness that really needs to be present in those environments. So these are complementary technologies. Anyway, maybe we can go a little further. When Uber originally started, everybody understands the Uber business model. They gave a lot of freedom to the people building out that company. The idea was to grow as fast as possible. Their result was that every city would have its own database. And so you'd have one
Oh,
for
really?
Denver and another one for Boulder. And if you needed to reconcile the driver supply or rider demand based on a blizzard, you'd have to actually have literally manual comparisons. You could have these very highly paid engineers literally pivoting their head back and forth between 2 screens in some cases, comparing the statistical models for Boulder and Denver in this example. They ended up developing a team of hundreds of people that were doing this manual work globally, not just for those ordinary sort of business analysis questions, but also for regulatory requirements. In some jurisdictions, there are different privacy requirements for license plates versus driver's licenses of the drivers. Again, requiring some portion of that 100-person team to be manually ensuring the integrity and conformance to these regulations. That happens all over the globe, but this particular one happened at Uber, where you have some very smart people realizing that this is not optimal and wanting to solve this problem. They tried their best to solve that in the way that they knew how, but it ultimately came down to requiring some new technologies, and that new technology in this case was Conexus. So Conexus came in and automated the process of integrating all of those. In that case, it was like 200,000 databases at that point into a universal data model that then could, with alacrity, give leadership the business answers that they were looking for and give the legal counsel the comfort that they're conforming to regulations in a way that guarantees integrity. And then those couple hundred people could do much more interesting work, because it's not much fun for anybody to be just doing glorified cut and paste or looking between screens. That's a
Right.
easy to grasp example of deployment of Conexus, where it provides value deep in the infrastructure of AI.
I really like that example. And honestly, you look at these big companies, big tech companies, and think that they have it all together, but to hear just how like disparate the data could be underneath is crazy to me, but also so important in the age of AI. And if you want to do anything, really, even just analyze your data, it sounds like there's a lot of work to do for some of these if their systems are looking like that. And it also makes me think of, I mean, here at Alteryx, our product, we hear similar stories about having data in different systems and then the time saved when they use Alteryx to bring it all together. But it sounds like Conexus would be like maybe the step before, where you're just getting data into a data model and then maybe someone could use Alteryx after that. Or how do you see those two fit together?
We're complementary to companies doing analytics. So, we don't do the actual analytics. We complement other companies that are doing the analytics. We are not creating data lakes or data warehouses. We are complementary to all of these processes. There are a whole bunch of little point solutions that provide portions of what we do, and you could just say that our automation from the Neuro-Symbolic AI is an amalgamation of all of these little point solutions into one, that allows databases to become a part of a universal data model and complementary to all these other excellent offerings.
Definitely. Shifting gears a little bit, I think you mentioned earlier a piece about the importance of being able to trust your data, trust the inputs. What do you think data practitioners should be looking for when they're looking to like build LLMs dependably and be able to trust the results?
We're looking at verification, provable verification on the inputs. We want to be able to dependably represent the data that has been included and that it's been included in a way that integrates cohesively. So much of LLM development takes some truth and then some more truth and then some more truth and still create some untruth out of that. But the underlying infrastructure often is incomplete. And so the place where we look is in verification, provable verification in the structured data warehouses, or we might even go further about the structuring of warehouses to have these universal data models. And once we have these universal data models, it's our conceit that you'll get, therefore, some much better output. And then the implementations, like you say, can still be exploratory because they're fundamentally probabilistic. You don't want to be running a power plant off a large language model. You don't want to be designing an airplane off a large language model. So it's important to be thinking about the ultimate implementations in a real world environment where a portion of the system may need to include a large language model and a portion of the system will benefit by including a neuro-symbolic deterministic AI.
Yeah. And real quick, before we move on, could you help me understand like neuro-symbolic AI better? I haven't really heard that term too much.
Well, so symbolic AI often had its apogee in the early 80s, but ran out of steam because people couldn't scale it. The popular expression of this was in expert systems, famously with IBM's Watson, which was just a marketing feint as they managed that into oblivion. We had learned to scale symbolic AI through the use of a domain of mathematics called category theory. And with category theory, which is a type of meta mathematics, we now can infinitely scale the deterministic or symbolic AI. We say the neuro part, neurosymbolic, is the representation that it ultimately will include a probabilistic portion and a deterministic portion. The best systems will have both. So there we have symbolic AI and a neural net part. So neurosymbolic AI.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. Well, you mentioned in your intro that you were a White House advisor on AI. So I'd love to get your perspective on some things regarding AI regulation. So back in, I think it was September 2024, there was a California bill on safe and secure innovation for AI models that ended up getting vetoed. But I'm curious what you thought of that regulation and what it means for AI regulation moving forward.
I was one of the people on record as not being a fan of that bill. Not a fan at all. It probably represents the worst of San Francisco politics and California politics, which is this type of, I don't know, I might say arrogance that we are not only the center of the world, but somehow the world. And, it's the wrong place to be originating legislation like that. And it was shown in this particular attempt at a bill, which would just have these magnificently damaging outcomes. The regulation of AI is an important conversation. All of us need to be part of this conversation about how we want these automation technologies to show up in our world. There's a variety of ways in which they can be doing good and harm. We know many of these already. We know many of these places where they can do good and do harm. But
Yeah.
we all need to be part of that conversation and be gentle around the regulation. That's not to say not regulate, but we need to be gentle because the danger of over regulation in this case is that it entrenches incumbents. firms like mine, small, fast growing, don't have an infrastructure to support a large regulatory department. We need to remain nimble and we need to conform to the existing rules as we understand them. Encoding and freezing in amber some current state as of our understanding and then creating an infrastructure around to support that is, often just counterproductive to innovation. That's a general statement. So in particular on this bill was the inability to articulate any degree of a solution or quantification of an efficacy of this. How to do what the bill claimed it was just really left as something. It's like an exercise for the reader. You guys go all to figure it out. I'll just say what the world should look like. Based on some other people with whom I work and their opinions of how powerful California should be in the world of regulating AI. But we don't know how you're actually going to do that. Therefore, this is an important point. We can't say how big a deal this is going to be for you all to be implementing conformity to this rule. We don't know. We just can't say. We're just going to arbitrarily say that it's based on pick your favorite future legislation. It could be based on processor size, or it could be based on the data set size, or it could be based on the power of the computers that were brought to bear. It's all silliness. I think it's much better than regulating inputs would be regulating outcomes. That's kind of the traditional way that legislation is often formulated. So I can't say I feel strongly about other regulations, but I knew this one was a bad one for that reason. We just did not know how to implement it. We didn't know what the technical implications are. So I'd say it was not well thought out. But I can equally say that it's important that all of us get involved in the conversation. There was some effort to advocate for a slowing down or a pause in AI development.
Right, I saw that.
I think that was just a media or PR exercise to think that you're going to stop automation or that stop the progress of automation. It doesn't even address the issue of the degree to which adversaries of the United States might continue to develop, which would be true, obviously. It's just that the formulation of how one would stop the development of AI is a completely an open question. So, in my view, a much more intelligent way to frame the conversation, have all those smart people, many of the signatories I respect, advocate for the acceleration of initiatives around safety. That effort just needs to expand. The people are new to this domain of AI safety. It's now been around for a few years, but that needs to see new energy or just continued energy around AI safety so we can have a rich conversation. So better than trying to slow AI development, let's accelerate AI safety conversation so we can just have both seats at the table for then the intelligent citizenry, like listeners to this, can engage with each other about what we want this technology to be in the world for all its various manifestations, whether it's in healthcare on the positive side or in privacy on the negative side. We all need to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think you just answered what was going to be my follow-up question of how do we balance the risks and things you're talking about earlier with not wanting to hamper innovation. And so your answer to that would be to focus more on like building up AI safety rather than pausing or taking apart current AI initiatives.
Yeah, Megan Smith was the chief technology officer of the United States during my term in the federal government. She had a great line where she just said, "We need everyone on the field." I just thought that was great. We need everybody on the field to have this conversation. I may have had more formal education in this domain than most, and I may have had a breadth of experience, from public policy and academia and venture capital and entrepreneurship that's rare. But this conversation cannot be left up to me or people like me. It needs to include everybody, not just because I'm trying to be magnanimous. It's that we need everybody to embrace the technology. And if they're not part of the conversation, they're going to have a degree of resistance around it or reluctance to adopt it. And given the life-saving potential of this, to say nothing of the dystopia that's, I guess, also possible, the Hollywood narratives. We need everybody to be engaged so they can understand what's hard and what's easy to implement. It's often the difference between an expert and an amateur in this domain, which is the amateur can be thinking something is hard when it's actually easy, and thinking something is really easy when it's actually hard. So only when you're engaged in the conversation you can then begin to have in your mind, as we all discuss ways in which we want these expressions to find purchase or be constrained, to know which is which.
Having everybody on the field sounds great, but it also sounds hard. Were there things like initiatives or efforts, or how do we get more people involved, do you think, with AI safety and efforts like that?
I was just at this event where I was talking to a professor of cybersecurity at a historically black college, HBU, in South Carolina. I was a little bit discouraged that she was forced by her administration to teach a curriculum that seemed like it was out of the 90s, discrete math and so forth. So I bring that up just to say that it's one example that I just experienced, that we all experience this general holding on to the past, where we're forcing our children to be learning geometry and trigonometry and calculus, when really they will be much better served to be learning probability and statistics and category theory, although that kind of sounds highfalutin. It's not that hard. That's the type of place that we need to be having these conversations. Just what is the future? Not teaching trigonometry and calculus just because that's what we've done for the last 50 or 100 years. We need to orient to the future. How do we have people engaged is, have this conversation be applied to people's real lives and know that they have a voice. I try to speak broadly on this just to include more people in the conversation so that they can feel comfortable with talking to their legislators so that we can get better bills than the last one that was proposed in California. I think if we get more citizens involved, we'll be able to do that, and they won't be influenced just by people like me, for or against. I might, with some degree of self-interest, advocate for the reading of these national AI initiatives. I personally think they were well written, where we defined, me and my colleagues, the future of government AI research 10 years out. Where will we look to be allocating the U.S. taxpayers' money in AI research, across the executive, from energy to transportation to defense. I think those are really interesting documents. They define where, or at least the vision for tax money going to research, and that's a good place to start. There's long-term views of AI like that, and then of course there's medium-term and even short-term views where you could just be following daily news. The critical part about getting people involved is just to be experimenting with AI. One of the benefits of large language models that was not available to me when I was in the federal government was just having technology that everybody can relate to. That's certainly present with large language models.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was part of the thing that really helped ChatGPT catch on so quickly. Like, people could go in and relate to it and see their use cases solved really quickly or chat with the model, and it just exploded when it was first released.
It did indeed. Fastest ever. Yeah. The infrastructure of database integration does not experience the same quick rate of adoption.
Shocking.
Yeah, deep in the infrastructure. And while people get involved with large language models and experiment with at least the four leading models, Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT, obviously, and Anthropic's Claude. I'd say those are probably the four big popular ones right now. Claude's my current favorite. Engaging with all four of them, I can offer that large language models as an AI architecture are not the sine qua non of AI. So we will have other AI architectures emerge over the next decade.
Definitely. I think that's a nice segue into the final thing I wanted to ask you about, which is just what's your perspective on how AI can lead to a better future?
Continuing what we're saying, AI will, the utopia of our dreams or the dystopia of some Hollywood screenwriter, only in the degree to which we participate. I remember President Obama had an oval-shaped carpet, of course, in his office, and along the rim of that was a quote that was at least credited to Martin Luther King. The long arc of history bends towards justice is a quote that was inscribed on this carpet. And President Obama reminded us the unsaid addition, not without our involvement. The long arc of history bends towards justice, but not without our involvement. I offer that here in relationship to AI, which is the future of AI can fulfill the utopia of our dreams, but not without our involvement.
That's a great line to end on, for sure. Thanks for coming on and for sharing your expertise. I love all the examples that you gave from your time at the White House and then building your company. So it's been really fun to learn more from you.
Thank you. It's kind. It's been a good time.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about topics mentioned in this episode and connect with Eric, head over to our show notes on alteryx.com/podcast. And if you like this episode, leave us a review. See you next time.